Has your mind ever taken you to a dark place? You didn't want to go there, but your mind took you there anyway. Isn't that what a nightmare is? Your mind taking you to a dark place? When I first started school, I had a nightmare that kept coming back. It all began when I was at the water fountain. That's when I noticed it. I'd be getting a sip of water, and I'd look down, and I realized I had forgotten my pants. Now, thankfully, no one else noticed my pantsless situation, but I did, and I wondered, I thought, how in the world am I going to make it through this whole school day without pants? It was terrifying. Now, thanks to Google, I now know that my pantsless dream is fairly common. And I am happy to report that I no longer am losing my pants in my dreams. But my mind still takes me to dark places. Often on a Saturday night, I have a recurring dream where I have either forgotten to come to worship at all until it was too late, or have arrived so terribly late. And I wake up like in a cold sweat till I'm relieved and realize I still have time. Now, scientists actually say these sorts of dreams help you. They help you cope with your fears and anxieties. I mean, school was not always easy for me, for example, but I never forgot my pants. And not every Sunday goes perfectly, but I haven't forgotten one yet. But what if your mind takes you to dark places and you're not dreaming? What happens then? For nothing about that dark place helps you. It hurts you. It traps you in fear. Have you ever had a what if thought? What if this person I love doesn't get through these problems they're facing? What if this person I love stops loving me? What if this medical test comes back with the wrong result? What if things don't get better? They get worse. What if happiness or fulfillment or whatever just is not possible for me now or ever? And those thoughts, they weigh you down. And they weigh you down because you know sometimes they happen. They live in the realm of the scarily possible. So what do you do when dark thoughts like that trap you? How do you discover a light that leads you out? How do you live in that light no matter how dark your life or no matter how dark this world becomes? How do you live in that light in a world that right now can feel so dark? Here in these words, written to people going through their own dark times, having their own dark thoughts, God shows you the way. And so let's listen and hear what God has to say. And as we do so, let me give you a little background on this letter that the Apostle Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples, was writing to a group of churches who were undergoing some really difficult times themselves. He was writing this letter to encourage them, and he begins this part of the letter with a strange phrase, but one that will be explained, I assure you. So I invite you to hear this word from the Lord, from a letter that Peter wrote to a church undergoing its own dark times. Therefore, Peter writes, gird up the loins of your mind, discipline yourselves, set all your hope on the grace that Jesus Christ will bring you when he is revealed. Like obedient children, do not be conformed to the desires that you formerly had in ignorance. Instead, as he who called you is holy, be holy yourselves in all your conduct. For it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And if you invoke as Father the one who judges you impartially according to each person's work, live in reverent fear during the time of your exile. You know that you were ransomed from the futile conduct inherited from your ancestors, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without defect or blemish. And he was destined before the foundation of the world, but was revealed at the end of the ages for your sake. And through him you have come to trust in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your trust and hope are in God. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So how do you deal with the darkness of the world? The dark thoughts that trap you? In one powerful word in this passage, God tells you. Because here God says, once you know how God has set you apart, that sets you apart. It sets you apart from the darkness and the fear. It sets you apart to see the light that shines on you always, no matter how dark things get. Now, the people to whom Peter writes are going through some difficult, dark times. In the very first part of this letter that occurs before the passage we read, Peter describes it as if saying they are going through a variety of trials. Now, going through one trial is tough. Can you imagine going through a variety of them? And so Peter writes them these thoughts to give them something to power them through, to give them perspective that will move them through these trials. And he tells them, look, you cannot change the circumstances you face, but you can change how you perceive them. You can change your perspective towards them. And he tells them how to do that with this sort of curious phrase, gird the loins of your mind. Now, when you think about what people wore back then, this phrase will make more sense. People wore robes. And if you wanted to run in a robe, well, at least, what did you have to do? You had to tuck your robe up over your legs, and everybody wore belts, so you had to tuck it into your belt. In other words, you had to gird your loins. And then you could run well. It reminds me of a time when I was in El Salvador on a mission trip, and our team was doing a summer outreach in a village. And when our van arrived, all the kids were running by the van, racing it. And one of our Salvadoran partners started yelling out to them, urging them on, saying, "Ponese las pilas, ponese las pilas." And what that literally means is, Argentina's smiling because she knows, it means put in the batteries. And it puzzled me, but then I realized what he was telling them to do. He was saying, get a move on. Put in your batteries. Kick it up a notch. And in the same way, Peter is saying to these folks to whom he is writing, he's saying, put in the batteries of your mind. Gird the loins of your mind. Get your head straight. Change your perspective. And I get that because in life, how you look at something makes a huge difference. French writer Alphonse Karr put it this way. He says, you complain that roses have thorns. And I rejoice and give thanks to the gods that the thorn bushes have roses. Do you see the difference? Now, what do these folks need to see differently? What do you need to see differently when dark thoughts rise in you? In Peter's words, God tells you, remember your holiness. You might ask, how can that help me? How can that give me perspective? How can that gird up the loins of my mind, so to speak? Well, to get that, you need to see the word holiness differently, because almost everyone gets this word wrong. And in Hebrew, the word for holy is kadosh, and it simply means set apart. Now, when you think about that with God, it makes sense, because after all, while God does everything God can to help us understand who God is, we are aware that God is way beyond anything we could, in the end, comprehend or imagine. I mean, just look at the people around you. Even they, the people closest to you, are way beyond what you can grasp or comprehend. Hasn't someone you've known very well for a long time, you know them for years, and all of a sudden they surprise you. You're like, wow, I never knew that about you, or I never understood this about you. And God is way beyond that. So to say that God is holy is to simply acknowledge how utterly set apart, how utterly beyond you, beyond everything that exists, God is. But then, how do you get set apart? Well, in the Bible, God actually sets apart a lot of things. God sets apart oil and clothes and pots and water. God sets them apart for a purpose. God makes them holy. But how do you become holy? How do you get set apart? And how does seeing yourself like that, as set apart, shift your perspective? How does it give you a light that leads you out of the darkness, that leads you out of the dark thoughts, that gets your head straight, that girds the loins of your mind? Right now, our favorite show to watch as a family is a show called The Voice. And yes, I know that the season of The Voice has already ended, so if you watch the show, don't tell me who won. We're not there yet. Now, this show has been a hit for well over a decade. It has never fallen out of the top 20. And once you know the premise of the show, you get why it's been so popular. These unknown singers, largely unknown, come on and they yearn for recognition. They yearn for success. They yearn to become the next voice. Now, they come out to sing, and hopefully they will get picked by one of 4 musical superstars. And these are big stars. 4 musical superstars to be on their team and to get a chance for America to select them as the next voice. But here's the twist. None of the superstars actually see the singers. They only hear them. So if a superstar likes what they hear, they press a button, and their chair, which is facing away, turns towards the singer. Now, before the singers have come out, the producers have already given them giving you their backstory. They've already described their losses and their failings and their tragedies and their heartbreaks. And so you are pulling for them. And then when they start singing, they are all so good. And so you wait with bated breath to see if one of these superstars will press their button and turn their chair. And when it happens, you are so psyched. Not only that, sometimes more than one chair turns. Sometimes all four chairs turn. And then all of a sudden, this unknown singer has four superstars fighting over them, begging this person, this singer, to be part of their team, to have this superstar as their coach. Now imagine how you would feel as a singer, singing your heart out, and one of these chairs turns. And one of these superstars, maybe someone you've looked up to, maybe even idolized your entire life, chooses you, sets you apart, says, I want you on my team. And so when it happens, you rejoice. And you immediately see how being set apart changes the perspective of these singers, because they realize that someone so beyond where they are has chosen them, believes in them, wants them. Now, do you get why I'm talking to you about the voice? Do you see the point? Because that is what God has done for you. You have been set apart like that. And you have not been set apart like that by some musical superstar. You have been set apart like that by someone way beyond that, by someone who is the ground of all existence, who is the creator of everything that is. But it gets bigger than that. Because you see, in the end, the voice is all about your performance, your popularity. In the end, it's about how you do, not who you are. But with God, it's not about how you do, it's simply that you are. That God loves you like that. So that love, that setting apart, it stays with you on your worst days and on your best days. Your holiness never leaves you. Your set apartness never departs, because God loves you like that. God loves you no matter what. But no, it gets even bigger than that. You see, these superstars on The Voice, as caring and supportive as they are, they're not sacrificing a lot. In fact, they're getting paid millions to be a judge. But God doesn't get paid anything. God instead pays everything. As Peter puts it, you have not been ransomed by silver and gold, which goes away, but God has paid for you with God's very life, God's very blood. And even as you and I took that life, as we killed in Jesus, God on that cross, God never stopped loving you, never stopped choosing you, never stopped loving me. And that love has set you apart. It has made you holy. It has made you God's own beloved child. And when you know that, it gives you perspective. But more than that, it gives you a purpose. For far too many don't know about their chosenness, about their set apartness, about the holiness that God has given to them. And so their dark thoughts take them down dark roads into dead-end places, all because they do not know the light that is shining on them even now. They don't see it, but you do see it. You have seen it. So you can share that light with them. And the more you do, the more that light shines into you, because you are living out the love that has first loved you. You are living out the love that has set you apart. And as you live and give that love, that light grows in the world, and that light grows in you. You see, this holy table of love that we're about to share isn't set apart just for you. God has set it apart for everyone. But too many do not know that they are invited, that they are welcomed, that here they are loved. But you can tell them. You can invite them. You can share the love that has loved you, that has touched you, that has set you apart, that has made you holy. So come to this table. Eat this bread and drink from this cup that Jesus has set apart for you, has made holy, has made God's very body and blood. But don't leave it there. Share this bread of love with your friends, with your family, with your neighbors. For everyone needs to experience this love. Everyone needs to know that they are set apart too. Because once you know how God has set you apart, it sets you apart. It sets you apart from the darkness and the fear. It sets you apart to live in the light of that love, no matter how dark your life or this world becomes. And it sets you apart for a purpose, to show others that light, to share with them that love. So do it. Let's go and do it together. Let's share the love that has set us apart, so that everyone might know, so that everyone might find their place at this table.